Okay, people should be flowing in.
Just to be clear, can people hear us, Hallie?
Yeah, people can hear us now.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. Just letting a few more people come in and waiting for some of our speakers.
Look around and see love. Just around. Hey, come on and turn your mind.
Andrew, how are you? Okay, so we have Andrew here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Hey, Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Steve?
Good. Thanks for parachuting in.
You know, that's I'm here to talk housing whenever anyone wants.
Looks like Polly has joined us as well.
Where's this? I'm gonna have to get out of it. Damn it.
Come in. No, tell them. Yeah, I'm not going to move. Hey, ask them if they can come back at 2. Yes, sir.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hey,
I'm
Polly,
good.
how are you?
I'm sorry. You all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay,
We
good.
can.
And who's putting the slides up?
Hallie's going to have to manage the slides. And we're going to have to go intermittent because the other ones are all in one and yours is not, but
mine's the DEMPED one. So when the deputy mayor joins, he's going to kick it off, right?
Yep.
Okay. So it's that one, but let me check with my team here. Richard?
Just send it to Hallie.
You just sent it to Hallie. Okay, so Hallie, you should have just gotten it from Richard.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you'll do the slides. Okay, good. Yeah, it's gonna get tossed to me from the deputy mayor. Okay,
Right.
so, and we'll see when he does that and on which slide. But I assume it's gonna be after an intro and then it's gonna toss to me for some of the specifics. And then I'm also gonna talk about LRSP as well.
Hallie, we can't in a webinar give Polly slide control. We can't do that, can we?
She should be able to control her own slides if she wants to share her screen.
Okay.
No, I'd rather you do it. Thank you, Hallie.
Yeah, no problem.
I mean, I can walk and chew gum, but I don't know about doing that and doing slides. Okay, so.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have our slide management nightmare stories that we could share around a campfire.
Yeah.
Mhm. Dang, Hallie, I would have won the bet.
Yeah.
Oh, they just sent it again. Crazy. They sent it twice.
Hallie, you're good with the order of the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a really tight agenda, Steve, so I'm not sure.
I just talked to Sharon, so she told me the deputy mayor was, wait a minute. I just have a call from Sharon, hold on.
I should have downloaded some elevator music or something.
Okay, Hallie, so we have a missing deputy mayor, meaning literally. So we're going to get started. Polly, we're going to start with you, but Hallie, kick us off, give us housekeeping remarks. Polly, I will make some intro remarks and then I will pass it to you. Hallie, you may want to get to Polly's slide since she's going to kick off. So Hallie, go ahead, get us started.
You can start with Howie, you can start with the front of the deck. It's okay.
Okay. So just some quick virtual housekeeping for everyone that this is a webinar. Only the panelists have their cameras on and can speak freely. Everyone else is their cameras off and they're unmuted. Please excuse any unexpected noise, pets, children, or anyone that might enter the camera frame since we're all working from home still. And this webinar is being recorded. If you have any technical issues, you can email myself or Raina Whitted, and our email addresses are right there. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve to do a quick introduction as I pull up your slide deck, Polly.
So hello, CNHED family. As I always say, we still miss you, still miss being in your presence and seeing your face and dining with you and networking with you. But I hope we are heading toward a stretch where that is going to change. We really do have a robust agenda, so I want to get into it. But I do want to frame this in a way that at least has resonated with me. And I'm sure that we all have a similar or our own takes on this. We all knew that prior to the pandemic, that the mayor had indicated major proposals to meet her goals, her announced goals for affordable housing, not just affordable housing, but also ending homelessness and economic mobility as well. And so across programs, across agencies, prior to the pandemic, we were anticipating investments, major investments, policy shifts, and other things that would advance these major issues that are challenges here within the district. And as soon as the pandemic hit and we began to not only quarantine and shut down, but also look at fiscal impacts and other things, one of our first questions to the administration back during that time was, is this going to change your goal pursuit? Is it going to change the number? Is it going to change the time frame? And resoundingly and immediately, the administration said, no, not at all. And so we all wondered, in fact, well, how, given fiscal impacts and given other impacts on the city, would we be able to keep both the aspirational goals as well as the time frame? And I'm delighted to tell you today that we're getting ready to find out at least more of how the administration intends to do that with the announcement of their FY21 supplemental, as well as their FY22 budget proposals. But I just want to say that that we should be just very grateful to the mayor and her team that they did not retreat from the goals, and that through all these changes we faced, they've kept the priorities that have characterized this administration around affordability for district residents, around upward mobility for district residents, and more. And so with that, I'm going to introduce someone who needs no introduction from us, but is not only the current head of the DC Department of Housing and Community Development, but also former board chair here at CNHED, and that's Polly Donaldson, Director of DHCD. Polly, take us away.
Great, thank you, Steve, and great teeing up, because yes, the focus has been on the goals and will continue to be, and every aspect of the both the FY21 supplemental and the FY22 budget will demonstrate that, and we're very delighted to be here today to walk you through it. I always love doing this briefing, as you know, because CNHED is very special to me and has always been and will continue to be. On behalf of Deputy Mayor Falcicchio, who may be joining us at some point during this call, and I'll certainly turn it over to him if he does, but I just want to say that this is a budget that was developed with the across the entire housing agency spectrum here at in the administration. So involving, of course, DEMHED and DHCD and DCHFA and the DC Housing Authority, and in partnership with the Department of Human Services, where we work together on housing for the homeless particularly. And so what you'll see in this proposal, and from my colleagues that will speak after me, are really some major investments, and in part to achieve the mayor's goals, but also to take advantage of the extraordinary federal funding that we are receiving in the district and to putting that towards housing. So let me go to the next slide if I could. Howie, thank you. Okay, so what is our strategy? And remember, of course, that we, a little over 18 months ago, we were talking in terms of the housing goals for 2025 of achieving 36,000 new homes, of which 12,000 would be dedicated to affordable housing, but also with an equity lens that really looked at dedicating the affordable housing units that we wanted to produce by planning area, by neighborhood, and making it so that really there was an equitable distribution of affordable housing throughout the district. We wanted to make sure that we included the goals of Homer DC in terms of making homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring, and looking also and making sure that we supported public housing, as well as continuing our fair housing strategy within the district and aligning 100% with HUD's fair housing strategy at the national level in the Biden administration. And then last but certainly not least, expanding home ownership opportunities across the district, particularly for low and moderate income and traditionally underserved communities. So next slide, please. So what we are doing specifically is looking at the investments that we can do and the crosswalk between the Housing Production Trust Fund and the Local Rent Supplement Program. For those of you who knew me when I was with on the CNHED board and know from the days of the early advocacy around the Local Rent Supplement Program, I have always been an advocate for aligning the statutory goals of the Housing Production Trust Fund, particularly in ensuring that we invest sufficiently at the under 30% MFI, and knowing that that often requires an operating subsidy, and in which case we actually have that with our local rent supplement program, and clearly aligning the investments in the trust fund with the investments in the LRSP. This budget does that. This budget and financial plan does that. You know that since 2015, Mayor Bowser has committed to $100 million as the floor for the trust fund, and some years exceeded that. That has led to more than 10,000 new homes, and a total investment of $1 billion since 2015 in the Housing Production Trust Fund, which I think is a remarkable achievement, and again made possible in part with the support from and the advocacy of members of CNHED and CNHED itself. And we're very grateful for that support and for walking through this together. We've really, I think, are at the maximum of the highest amount that we've ever been able to do for the trust fund. I think, in 2019, and Steve, you referenced this, that, we had 3 times more applications for our grant funding or for HPTF investment than we could fund. And we left about 1,200 units on the table, if you will, unfunded. But I'm delighted to be able to say that with this investment, both in the FY21 supplemental and in FY22, we are able to clear the pipeline. And yes, the slide deck will be made available. Thank you. We are going to be able to clear the pipeline for existing projects and be able to do an additional request for proposals later this year after we issue the qualified allocation plan that I'll talk about in just a minute, and we'll be happy to answer questions on. As you know, the HPTF and the LRSP, we want them to work in tandem. It means that we can, with projects that use HPTF, support our lowest and most vulnerable residents and citizens, and to create the deeply affordable units. And the budget proposal includes $42 million for LRSP project-based vouchers over FY22 and into the out years of the financial plan, which I think is really a first. So you can see by this chart what that investment is going to do in terms of what we're going to be able to do for additional units and the number of units that we're able to do. And then obviously the links are to some other resources as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. So where are the investments? I have 3 slides coming up. And again, we will make these available, the slide deck available so that you can have this as a reference point in your advocacy. So where are the signature investments? Right now in the Housing Production Trust Fund, there will be $400 million invested, both in $150 million in FY21 supplemental and $250 million in FY22. There will be $42 million, as I said, of new LRSP vouchers. We are investing $1 million pilot program to expand the Oramenta Newsom Fund to include a faith-based housing initiative to take advantage of the fact that we know that there are faith-based institutions that want to accomplish mission and also want to be able to help with the affordable housing needs in their communities. We're also putting in an accessory dwelling unit demonstration project that's going to help support, I believe that's at 1.5 million, that will help support the creation of ADUs across the district. In terms of preservation, there will be 17 million in the Housing Preservation Fund added to, and that of course is a leveraged fund. So that's a 3-to-1 match. So that 17 million will garner an additional amount as well, 3 times that amount by our implementing fund managers. And then finally, and this is new, and it's in part related to the fact that in the American Rescue Plan, there's $19 million in acquisition and development funding for affordable housing acquisition, especially targeted to homeless or formerly homeless populations, and that we are intending to partner with the Department of Human Services. And in addition, we've leveraged that with 31 million of local funds. And so that will be 50 million as an acquisition fund to acquire some of the distressed properties in the district as a result of COVID, and to be able to help convert them to affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. Additionally, there's $2 million, what will be a separate grant for the Douglas Community Land Trust as part of our investment in their work in the district. Next slide, please. But there are other housing investments, as you know. We are proposing in terms of the a tweaking, if you will, to the DC low-income housing tax credit that enables us to maximize the public support for the local credit, as well as making sure that we maximize the federal low-income housing tax credit. We are proposing also in the BSA property tax relief for any low-income housing that is helping to produce that, and it equalizes that support across the board. Andrew Trueblood, Director Trueblood, is here from the Office of Planning. We are planning 2 initiatives in Ward 3 and in New York Avenue in terms of planning to achieve the goals in the mayor's housing equity framework. Andrew, do you want to speak briefly to that?
I'll just say, I think what's important about the mayor's proposal is it talks about the needs today and also thinks about the needs and how we need to adjust for the future, recognizing that equity and a more equitable distribution of affordable housing is something that we need your assistance to get to in maybe in the medium run. And so these are some investments to make it easier to build housing and affordable housing, especially in Ward 3, but also along New York Avenue.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And then we also, as you know, and this is incorporated into the 21 budget as well, is the Stay DC program that actually will be operational through FY22 as well. And you know the efforts that we're making to do that and how absolutely clear it is that we need to continue to get the word out and to access these resources and help our tenants and access these resources as well. Next slide, please. So there also are additional investments that are being done both by DEMHED, the DC Housing Authority, DHS, and DHCD. I'll run through these quickly. There are redevelopment projects that is part of DEMHED's real estate portfolio, some of them very familiar to you: Hill East, St. Elizabeth's East, McMillan Reservoir, 1600 U Street, the Reeves Center, and 1800 Martin Luther King as well. And then also in terms of public housing, you can see the projects that will be supported, including Clare Ridge, Northwest One, Park Morton, and Berry Farm. Homeward DC, I'm going to let Director Zeilinger speak more to that in terms of the support that will be there, particularly for permanent supportive housing. We continue to fund HPAP and the Employer Assisted Housing Program to help district employees become homeowners in the district. And also we will be investing $20 million to help our portfolio DHCD comply with the new BEPS standards, Building Energy Performance Standards. And then finally, additional support for the Office of the Tenant Advocate as well. I understand Deputy Mayor Falcicchio is here now. Let me just see, did I have another, can you do the next slide, Haley? Hallie, sorry. Okay, great. There are appendices. We will be sending those around, but now I want to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Falcicchio, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Polly. Hope you can hear me okay. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I was actually meeting with Councilmember McDuffie, and he assured me that he's not going to make any changes to the budget. And he's just going to vote for all or push his members, fellow members, to just approve it. I see Steve shaking his head. No, but I did have a great meeting with Councilmember McDuffie, just really focused on how we create jobs. And I know we focused a lot on housing, but we know that you're also partners in making sure that DC businesses really are part of this next phase. So we really think about this, and we've talked about it before, as relief, recovery, and growth. And right now we're making sure that we utilize all the resources we have for relief, but then we'll move on to our recovery so that we get back to where we were pre-pandemic and hopefully grow again. And not just hopefully, but we will grow again. I think what Polly laid out with the help of Andrew was really making sure, I see some questions popping up in the chat, want to make sure we get right to those, but really making sure that we have the investment that we need in order to make sure that we continue to that pipeline of affordable housing. And so I think we have, obviously, folks will focus in on the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is obviously our most important tool. But what Polly just ran through with Andrew's help really shows you that there's a lot of different tools out there in order for us to make sure that we preserve and continue to create housing. What we need your help to do, and I know, I don't know if Polly was able to walk through this too, is we need your help to make sure that we find more opportunities in high opportunity neighborhoods. And so that's something that we're coming to you all to say, we'll have another NOFA this calendar year, but we need to make sure that we find those opportunities in high opportunity areas. Really going to be looking at Rock Creek West for how we find some income restricted affordable housing opportunities there. So look forward to partnering with you, one, to make sure that this budget survives intact, but then also making sure that we get right to the implementation. So for us, we're really focused on working with our partners on the council to make sure all these great ideas that Mayor Bowser has put forth in the Fair Shop budget carry through their process. But this summer, we're not going to miss a beat. We're spending this summer making sure that we're ready to implement as soon as this funding is available. And so some of it actually happens in 21, some of it in 22. So we really want to hit the ground running with these different investments and these different tools that we have. So with that, I could kick it back to
me.
Great. All right.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you for joining us. And you missed our opening praise moment for the mayor and the administration, which I just want to share very briefly. We talked about how the mayor announced her goals, and then we faced the pandemic, the fiscal impacts, and so forth. And I cited how we asked you all, actually during the pandemic, was this going to change the mayor's goals, numbers, and timeline, and how immediately you all said, no, we're still going to, we're still going to pursue the numbers, and we're still going to pursue the time frame. And of course, many of us out here wondered, well, how can that be, given the fiscal impacts particularly? And one of the things that you all said early on was, well, to get there, we're going to need an influx of federal funding, but if and when we get it, you'll see. And the way we're building today's conversation is us learning and seeing how you're going to keep step with that. And just credit for the mayor and her team for not retreating from that during the pandemic or after, and even further using the disruption of the pandemic to focus even more deeply on the goals through the lens of racial equity and upward economic mobility and so forth. So I didn't want you to miss that was our opening framing. There are some questions, and I'm going to go to the top.
Question. Let me just to that, as I to individual council members, they really always ask, well, is there enough need? Because this resource is huge. Is there enough need in terms of projects? And so that's why we wanted to convene today to say, like, you've got to stay in front of the council to say that there's more than enough need, and we'll make sure that there are quality projects in high opportunity neighborhoods as well to make sure that we hit these goals that the mayor's laid out, but are the citywide goals. I see Polly coming off mute as well on that note.
Yeah, because actually what we're going to be sending out from DHCD in the next day is a survey asking for your best estimates of what pipeline you might have or projects in development. You don't have to, give the name or even the location, but just some idea of it so that we can really make that case and have the data to prove that. So look for that in your mailboxes coming up, and certainly we'll let CNHED know as well, and they can distribute to their members. But it is to really get your sense from of what you've got planned or what's been on hold during the pandemic, that now these resources can truly help. We know anecdotally it would be great to have the data to back that up.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Polly and Mr. Deputy Mayor. We had actually begun collecting that data as soon as, actually before, but certainly after the mayor released her trust fund announcement, we began to collect that data, knowing that we would need to help contribute to validating the investment that the mayor was proposing. So, Polly, we'll look for that send, and we'll make sure we socialize that so that the data can come back into you. We're going to collect it as well because we have multiple uses for that data, not just the mayor's budget. I think the other thing that's noted, because we've had the praise moment for the administration, is that this also represents a praise moment for the field. Several years ago, and Polly, I'll say this to you, you issued a challenge to the field to get to scale. You saw the need and you saw not only the opportunity, but the challenge within the sector to get to scale. And our members took that challenge very seriously. And even though we may not be fully at scale yet, we are certainly, as a result of that challenge, in better places than we were 2 and 3 years ago. To be continued and more heights to be obtained, but we are in pursuit of that. Let me go to a couple of questions that are directed at Polly and perhaps the deputy mayor. Then I do want to get to Laura and Tyrone as well. There was, the BSA describes a new use of LRSP, the establishment of capital-based assistance. Can you describe these funds, how these funds will be released, who has access to them and for what purpose? And that's either Polly or the deputy mayor.
I'm happy to take this, Deputy Mayor, if I could. One of the things, and I mentioned this in the slide that talked about aligning the HPTF with the LRSP, is to ensure that there's sufficient funds, but also to ensure that they're there in a timely way so that projects can get closed into the finish line, and so that we can move, I think, more efficiently and be able to track those LRSP project-based dollars. I think the same is also true on the LRSP tenant-based side, and Director Zeilinger will speak to that from a DHS perspective. But yes, the BSA is suggesting and is proposing to, starting in FY23, which is when the project selected in the next RFP would begin to come online, that the new LRSP funding would come to, for project base, would come to DHCD, and for tenant base would come to DHS, that then they would then allocate them, account for them, budget them, and then MOU to the Housing Authority for implementation. Existing LRSP contracts, you will see in this budget year, are in the DCHA budget and would continue to be. And sponsor base will be part of the DCHA budget because they have that separate allocation for existing units to provide additional rental subsidy. So there is a lot of language in the BSA on this, but I think the bottom line is this is really a more efficient way and a way to ensure that funds stay with the project-based funds stay with projects. And even in that period of time between selection and opening of projects, that we don't lose those funds, and they will go and be in a carryover reserve fund to be accessed and used for project-based. And again, tenant-based will have their own allocation within DHS, and Director Zeilinger can speak to that more. I will say that this is actually, I think, one of the most significant elements. LRSP is now an established program. It's, in my opinion, baked into the budget. It's got now forward allocation in the financial plan that actually takes into account the goals that we have set for Mayor Bowser's affordable housing going forward. And it really looks to achieve the statutory balancing of the under 30% MFI, assuring that 50% of the fund goes towards those units. And this is intentional on the part of the mayor in her proposal for the BSA. And I'm happy to be able to answer additional questions on that. We would really want and need your support on this. It is anytime there's a change, obviously, but we think this will really further mature and cement and make even more efficient the local rent supplement program.
Thank you, Polly. So let me say this right now. I'm looking at 12 questions in queue. I know that I'm not going to be able to get to all of them before I need to move to Director Zeilinger and Director Todd. So I'm going to get to a couple more now live, Polly, and then Polly, what we will do is collect them. We will send them to you all for a response. I'm going to try to pick the juicier ones. The next one is for live discussion, but we'll send you the follow-up questions as well, is about the Orman and Newsom Fund. The question is it back open for its originally designed use, or is it being changed for another function?
So the answer is both. It will be reopened for the general use by nonprofits, and we're adding a faith-based initiative to it that is specifically for faith-based institutions that are exploring developing affordable housing. So it's a both and.
That's great, because you killed two questions with that
You know,
answer.
I saw the question. So yeah, I was ready. I was ready. Keep going.
All right, Boardman Hotel represents a unique opportunity to create a model for affordable housing. It's a high opportunity possibility, but it can't be realized without city acquisition. Can you outline ways in which the city might be able to do this?
Sure, we've certainly, and I've heard the testimony. We've met with the various groups in Ward 3 that are interested in this. I do know that it is in a bankruptcy proceeding, and also there is some litigation. I also know that where I think our interest would be in is seeing who does the overall acquisition and being able to partner with them with some potentials for some of the units meeting the need of addressing the goals that the mayor has for Rock Creek West. But I think, I think we need to see how that process evolves and to certainly closely monitor it and stay in touch. And that's what we're intending to do.
Okay. I'm going to just take a little bit of a turn, and I'm going to do two more questions and then move on. And Polly, we will capture the rest and send to you and the deputy mayor. This is a question about returning citizens, and the question is, out of the 12,000 affordable homes, no, I'm sorry. My question is, out of the 12,000 homes that will be for affordable, is there a percentage of units that will be dedicated for returning citizens? And I think it's the broader citizens returning question that's really being posed here.
Sure. There's not an exact, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Yes, there's not an exact percentage. I will say that we are, though, looking forward to getting proposals that address that. And one of the priority areas will be addressing both our homeless residents and using some of our acquisition funding that I mentioned, as well as and knowing that oftentimes returning citizens become homeless due to a lack of housing that is affordable and accessible and with the services needed. So I do see that as a priority of the administration, that we will be looking to collaborate with the Department of Human Services and the Office of Returning Citizens as well to be able to talk with them.
Okay. And actually, Hallie told me we have time because
Yeah, we do.
Director Zeilinger is scheduled to come on.
Can I jump in on that then too?
Absolutely.
Sure.
The other thing you should know is that in the building blocks investment that Mayor Bowser talked about yesterday, it's a $59 million investment in gun violence prevention. One of the items within that $59 million is $11.4 million for what we call flexible spending. So we're going to work with community-based organizations to really figure out how to engage residents who are who need to kind of take a pivot themselves to make sure that they don't find themselves in trouble. What that flexible spending is actually supposed to do is to be a resource for housing, for career support if they need some help figuring out what they want to do or need help getting to work, but then also for cash assistance. And so this is kind of the first time we're trying this, that we actually have laid out money for community-based organizations to actually provide flexible spending to them so that they can actually do case management with individuals who, again, may need to make a real hard pivot so they don't find themselves in trouble. So that's kind of one of the ways, that Mayor Bowser is always going to make sure that the police have the resources they need, but we also know that we have to step up our gun violence prevention in other ways. This is one way we'll do it too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that perspective. This is Polly, an annual question that you always get asked when there's a new appropriation on the table, which is, of the $400 million that the mayor announced in the HPTF, how much is committed already to projects in the works? You get this question every time.
Sure, and I think we answered this at the mayor's announcement about the $400 million. because we were able to announce that day that we had 8 projects in the pipeline on the waiting list that we were able to fund immediately for FY21. And I can tell you that there are we are aware that there are, and that clears the pipeline. And so we know that there are some other projects that were submitted in the previous round that need to and probably will resubmit. And we know that, but we also know that we anticipate a demand and the ability to be able to meet that demand going forward, both in with the balance of FY21's supplemental spending and with FY22's appropriation. These are unprecedented historic amounts for the trust fund, and we want and need that demand and the projects to be able to fund. And so again, that survey will be helpful, but I anticipate that we will be able to have a robust RFP issued later this summer. I will say that the qualified allocation plan provides an opportunity for public input on the overall affordable housing strategy, how we use our federal low-income housing tax credits, and how we use our related local funds to support that and blend the funding for mixed income housing as well as for our most vulnerable populations as well. Deputy Mayor, do you want to add to that?
No, I was.
Oh, okay. All right, I didn't know if you were unmuted.
I would just get next one.
Yeah, well, Polly, I will tell you, once the mayor made the announcement in anticipation of our council testimony, as well as our advocacy day and others, we begin, as I said, to ask people about pipeline projects. And I think when you get the survey results, you'll be very pleased. I haven't done a hard count, but I've been paying attention to email traffic ever since the mayor made her announcement. And I think you'll be very pleased with things that are out there and ready to come online. I don't think we're going to face a question of, did the mayor allocate too much based on the need and they're ready to go? I don't, again, have a hard count, but what I've seen so far, I think will be very encouraging.
Well, and actually, I should jump in, because the one thing we were talking with DHCD about too was to even fund when we get the next round of applications, to even fund like the expedited permitting at DCRA. Like we want to go ahead and fund that because we're serious about getting projects started. And so that's something that we want to work with you on too, to let council members know, like, we're saying the plans are real. We're even actually going to go to DCRA on the expedited path in order to get these projects started. So that's how we're thinking about it. We are not kidding when we say that these funds are ready to go, and we want the projects to be ready to go as well.
Well, I say this really lightheartedly and lovingly, but if you fix that, we will erect a statue in your honor.
Oh, which one? Deputy Mayor? Oh, no, just kidding. Just kidding.
We'll do dual statues. There'll be a tripartite statue.
Whatever.
Just to be clear, we don't want statues. We want housing. You get housing done, we'll be happy.
All right, let's see.
Other questions?
Someone raised the issue about mental health services, and this may be something that Laura includes in her presentation or addresses, but
let me just start off and
mental health services.
Yeah, I know that Director Zeilinger will address this, but I can tell you that since I've been here at DHCD, our support for permanent supportive housing and the creation of units that are dedicated both with housing and wraparound supportive services, including mental health services, has been a hallmark here. It's now a required part of any new production to have a minimum of 5% of permanent supportive housing. And now we are looking to the goals of Homeward DC 2.0 to achieve some of the site-based permanent supportive housing that we know also is very much needed, particularly for our singles population. And so that is a priority. You'll see that in the QAP as well. And I encourage public comment on that, but do know that that is something we do believe is essential to supportive housing for our most vulnerable populations.
Okay, let me just do a quick time check. I think we're good, couple more. How will transitioning to all electric heating and cooking in new affordable housing, both new and renovated, be implemented to meet DC zero carbon by 2050 mandate?
Well, that's one of the examples where we will be turning to our partner at DOEE and looking to do some collaborative initiatives with them in order to help that. We know that's going to be part of the costing for new proposals going forward, and we want to support that. We very much want to support that and see and have that incorporated into the new proposals we're getting.
And Polly, do you remember, I think it's in the deck, but what's the resource that we're making available
For the building energy performance standards or BEPS, we're making 20 million. I did mention that from the deck, 20 million available from DOEE that will be incorporated into the consolidated RFP that will be issued later this summer.
As we think about the survey too, and Steve, as you think about sort of getting attention to this and making sure it survives the budget, I think that one is an important one to highlight. We're going to need at least every dollar of that. You all can put it to work without a doubt. So let's make sure that survives too. And that's separate from the 400 million. So just want to make sure people are thinking about that one as well.
I'm going to ask one more question of Polly and the deputy mayor. And then Andrew, I'm going to ask you to just give any kind of comp plan connection update that you may want to do before we pivot. So will housing co-ops be eligible for the expanded tax exemption being processed? I don't know if they mean the tax credit program, I'm not sure.
It's the property tax, it's the proposed property tax, and it's harmonization, and it is looking specifically, and yes, I do believe, although I'll allow my team to correct me, that co-ops are involved because they're fundamentally, even though they are for-profit enterprises, they've been with a nonprofit agenda. But let me get clarity from my team, and I'll correct myself if I need to, but I believe co-ops are involved. And I will say also, another resource that I didn't mention is the upcoming Homeownership Assistance Fund that is coming out of the American Rescue Plan Act that DHCD will be implementing. That will be up to $50 million. That will include supports for particularly homeowners, and I'm thinking particularly some of our low and moderate income condominium owners and co-ops, and some of the challenges they're facing in terms of collection of fees and such, and being able to stabilize in relation to economic impact from COVID. So stay tuned. There will be more about that. I'll be speaking to it in my testimony on June 18th.
Okay, and I'm going to do a quick merge here because I think this dovetails. This is a combination. Polly, Deputy Mayor, and Andrew. I'm going to ask Andrew. CNHED partnered with a lot of people and the Office of Planning around advancing the comp plan, which we all grew to appreciate was really important, the platforming some of the affordable housing and other pursuits. And so, Andrew, I would love for you to just give a snapshot report of the plans passing and kind of how it represents some of the platform or pursuit consistent with the mayor's goals and the city's in the administration's broader view of how we have to have housing across the district.
Yeah, thank you. I'll briefly share that. I think the Washington Post called it a 1-2 punch of the comp plan being updated and then the significant investment in affordable housing. And I think the two really do speak to each other. The intention is that it makes it easier for housing providers to produce more housing, and comp plan does that in a few ways. It creates, as I shared earlier, it creates more density along corridors and in high opportunity areas, as well as in other places. There's the housing chapter, the housing element was basically rewritten to talk about a number of the goals and the importance of equity around housing, the importance of different levels of income support. So there's a lot there. As it relates to the practical nuts and bolts of the work that is done by many members of CNHED, there are a couple of things, and including things that you work for, which is in some of the areas where there's additional density, planning analysis is required before zoning changes. But there are two important exceptions. One is for PUDs, and the other is for affordable housing or housing, affordable housing projects. So I think that's an important. You don't have to wait for us if there are high opportunity areas, which is, I think, an important thing. Another thing is just generally our zoning looks favorably upon affordability levels higher than IZ. I would say generally higher than 20%, and that's much of the work that you all do. That should make it easier to get through zoning. That should make it easier to get more density and get your projects through faster. And so that's what we want to see you all producing more units and in higher opportunity areas. And hopefully the comp plan can do that. Of course, as we get to implementing it, I'm excited to partner with you and members to make sure that we're living up to that.
That's great. Given significantly increased construction costs, will the upcoming DHCD NOFA adjust for these costs?
We will certainly take a look at that, and we'll, that'll be part of the process of the RFP preparation. So certainly we want to reflect the ability to make projects happen, and make the underwriting process go through with as few changes as necessary. In other words, really being very clear up front what costs are, and being able to maximize our resources, both with the trust fund as gap financing, but also with tax credits, with the DC local LIHTC, as well as other resources that we can bring to the table.
There are a couple of other questions that really are kind of focused on services. So I think I'm going to hold those for Laura, because I think they come down her lane. And actually with that, I think we have addressed all of the questions that are housing related. I would love to give the deputy mayor and Polly and Andrew any kind of closing remarks. And let me just say that we understand what's been put on the table, and despite our remote existence, we intend to have a very active advocacy season. We do have Advocacy Day set. We have begun some of our conversations individually with council members, but we will have them with all of them, all the way up to the chairman. And we tend to, to do our voice part in making this equation whole by letting the council know that this advocacy community is definitely in support of the mayor's proposals.
Can I just say we are very grateful for that, Steve, and very grateful to the CNHED membership. Again, I ask if any individual, you all know how to reach me, please give me a call. I'm happy to explain any and every provision, both in the budget, but also in the BSA, and to really walk through the details, because the details are important. We don't have time for all of them here, but I'm happy to take your calls and to clarify any questions. So please give a call. I can put my number in the chat, and or I can just say it. It's 202-412-4180. Please give me a call.
Great.
And just wanted to thank you guys for having us. Thank you for helping us in this work, but also just making sure this next 50 days or so, where the council looks at the budget, really want to make sure that we stay in close contact, because there will be questions that come up. And I see some, can't see the full question popping up, but I was actually going to mention kind of Ward 3. So Andrew's actually been working on a couple different planning exercises for Ward 3. When those happen, we need you all to help us and be at the table when those happen. So Steve, we'll make sure we, stay in touch with you, make sure that you know of those conversations that are going on. But Andrew, if you can maybe talk to us too, just about, I'm thinking of the Chevy Chase Library and Recreation site. We want to make sure there's housing above that. We need to work with the ANC on it. Friendship Heights, so really, I know we mentioned the Wardman, but also Friendship Heights. There's a lot that could happen there in terms of, that's probably one of the best areas for conversion from commercial to residential. So we want to make sure you all are at the table and at those conversations. And really, for some reason, I think housing sometimes is a little bit scary to some of the neighbors, but it really, we all know, you all know, because you do the work, that it really adds to the vitality of the neighborhood. So maybe I could turn it to Andrew to close out, but just thank you. And let's think about how we, with this big investment, with the comp plan behind us, how we move the needle in Ward 3 specifically.
And thank you. I will tell you that Andrew, before you make your remarks, Andrew, has pulled us into that conversation early on. We know he's been working on this a while, not just through the comp plan, but independently of it as well. And I also say that we have within our network people who have influence in Ward 3, and they share these values. And we just need to keep them informed and also activated so that when the time comes where, broad voices need to be heard and known on this issue, that we are connected and that we're informing them and activating them as well. Andrew?
Great, thank you. So I guess I'll just quickly say, in Chevy Chase, where the visioning is underway. We had a visioning session last Saturday. We also have upcoming, tonight, it already happened today. It's happening right now. But tomorrow, June 10th, 6 to 8 p.m. I can send information on Chevy Chase. We also have Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast planning going on right now. Housing is tomorrow, 6:30 to 8. I can share this information with you, Steve, to distribute. And then,
Okay.
you know, obviously we hopefully with this budget pass, we will then be ramping up at Friendship Heights, at Tenleytown, and then doing design guidelines at Cleveland Park and Woodley Park. So those are all areas that we would welcome in engagement.
Great. Thank you all so much. Mr. Deputy Mayor, please pass on to the mayor our thanks for her continued leadership and really hunkering down and actually pivoting back to an aspirational platform so quickly, given what we faced the last year and a half. It is noted that we're really not missing a step. And I don't think anybody would have foreseen that 6 months ago or 8 months ago or even 10 months ago. So please pass our gratitude on to the mayor on behalf of the CNHED leadership and membership.
Well, I'll try to channel her right now. And I know she would say, 1, you're welcome. And 2, make sure it survives the budget, right? So
understood. Duly noted, as they say, duly noted.
Thank you, Steve, for the invitation. Appreciate being here. Thank you all.
Absolutely, thank you all so much. So we're going to continue on, and we're going to pivot to Director Zeilinger, who I think is on the call. Director Zeilinger, are you here? Hey, Hallie, are you online? Hallie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm assuming that Director Zeilinger may be showing back up at 1 when she was told her presentation. Do you want to give people updates on Advocacy Day while we're waiting?
Sure. Well, first, hold on. Let me turn my camera back on so everyone can see me. There we go. So first and foremost, we have another budget briefing next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I believe, for economic development. And so we'll have DOES, DSLBD, OSSI, and the Workforce Investment Council coming to present for that budget briefing, and that's next Tuesday. And I can drop the link, the registration link in the chat, but you'll be also, I'm sure, if you're subscribed to our newsletter, get a bunch of alerts between now and then. And then next Friday, so Friday June the 18th, will be our virtual advocacy day, which is kind of turning into more of a day of action, where we will be engaging all of the committee chairs. And so we have McDuffie lined up, Silverman, who else? Duffy, Silverman, and Nadeau. And gosh, the most important one, Steve. The
Councilman McDuffie.
no,
No? Anita Bonds?
there it is, Bonds. Anita Bonds. Like, oh my gosh, it's escaping me. We'll each have 30 minutes of their time as they, present an overview of their committee budgets. In addition to that, we'll have a tweet storm and then a letter writing campaign, and all of this information will be coming in an email later this week.
All right, Hallie, let me jump in. Director Zeilinger is here, but I don't think she's in presenter mode. Can you address that?
Yes.
And Director Zeilinger, can you speak or no?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Hallie, let me introduce Director Zeilinger. I think her slides are up. Hallie, I'm assuming you're going to be operating her slides. And so as we always do with our budget briefing, we invite Director Zeilinger to talk about human services, to talk about the plan to end chronic homelessness, and a host of other things that are relevant to CNHED members. And so Director Zeilinger, we will turn it over to you. And we look forward to your presentation on the mayor's budget.
Thank you so much. Just want to make sure you can hear me.
We can.
Wonderful. And can you see me? Yeah? Yes.
We can see you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and we can go right into the first slide. I'm going to just take a leap of faith and assume that my colleagues provided some introduction to the values that guided the mayor's budget proposal and the opportunity that this presents for the city. And I'm going to just focus right in on how does that relate to the Department of Human Services and our budget. And so when we think about the opportunity of the Department of Human Services and our mission and our values, we know that of course, the economic impact that COVID has had does not hit us all evenly, just as the pandemic and the public health implications have not hit us all evenly, which means that there is an increased demand for the services and supports that the department provides, and also that we need to really rethink and double down on our efforts in a number of areas to support our residents. So we need to be able to continue the income support programs for a larger number of residents to meet their essential needs, as well as offering new programs that are available to us through the federal government, such as the pandemic EBT program that replaces meals that children would have otherwise received at school. It increases in the SNAP program, in addition to the regular SNAP emergency allotments that increase that benefit for people during the pandemic, as well as a growing need for TANF cash assistance and an increase in TANF cash based on increases in cost of living. In addition, we need to be able to prevent homelessness. We need to help people who have had difficulty paying their rent during the pandemic to be able to stay in their homes. We know that in so many district residents were one paycheck away from homelessness, not being able to pay their rent before the pandemic, and even more people have struggled with the cost of housing. We need to be able to prevent homelessness, and there's quite a lot of resources available to us through the federal government to do that, and we are trying to leverage all of that for that purpose that we can, as well as making sure that the services that DHS offers are protect the safety and health of our residents, meaning that our shelters for people in all of our services for people experiencing homelessness have access to the vaccine, which is the most important way to protect them against COVID, as well as that we have the right social distancing, hygiene, and meal preparation practices in place, and that we're able to offer quarantine when that is needed, and we've been and have people who have a heightened risk non-congregate shelter through our PEP-V program. We're also making unprecedented investments for single adults who are experiencing homelessness. I'm going to talk a lot about that and the need to be able to really double down on those efforts to address a growing need in our single adult homelessness system, as well as increasing our supply of permanent supportive housing. And there's an exciting initiative I'm going to talk about next around really understanding the work that we do through an equity lens and changing some of the systemic barriers that are built into our programs so that we can remove barriers and we can promote career advancement and economic mobility. So on the next slide, I'm going to start with that, which is an exciting I won't start that. I'm going to get to that soon. I'm going to start with Stay DC. So you may have heard a little bit about this from others who spoke ahead of me to you today. We have launched a new program, Stronger Together by Assisting You, with federal emergency rental assistance funds. This program is really important. We can pay 12 months of rent arrears going back to the beginning of the pandemic. And that is really, as well as some prospective rent for people who have still not regained income and need help maintaining their rent for up to 18 months of total support between the two tranches of emergency rental assistance funds that are available to the district. More than $350 million we have allocated for that purpose, and we know there's a large need, and I'm very excited to say the money is now flowing, and I hope many of the members are actually seeing that in the form of payments that are coming to you for rent arrears owed. We also have a number of other programs where we're leveraging the emergency rental assistance in order to more quickly intervene when people do enter the homeless services system to help them exit, or for people who need some ongoing assistance, some new and exciting ways that we support them, as well as expanding the housing programs that are available for people who don't need permanent supportive housing, but need other housing interventions to regain housing, to become housed and to build their income in that housing, but are not, don't meet disability or chronic homeless definition such that they would have a long-term voucher, but housing is still essential for them to grow their income to be able to maintain. And we also have, since the beginning of the public health emergency, continued rent assistance for families in rapid rehousing, regardless of the amount of time they've been in the program. And we are offering some additional extensions for the rent assistance, understanding that it will take some time for families to be able to also build their income in that program. So a lot of really important investments that are all aimed at helping people exit homelessness, as well as to maintain their housing and not fall back into homelessness, and to meet that really important rent assistance need. Moving on to the next slide, I've sort of given you a teaser twice for something that I am really excited about. And I know I've been in front of this audience several times, and you have probably heard me talk about in some way some of the challenges that we have in our income support programs and around helping people build their income. There are policies that are built into economic support programs in childcare, housing, cash assistance, Medicaid, that as people begin to grow their income, they lose eligibility for benefits at a faster rate than they are earning. So that then they are at a point where they either accept a raise or they agree to work more hours or continue to grow. They have to make a choice between doing that or losing essential assistance. It basically, that's what we mean when we talk about a benefit cliff. We want to change that. We think that being able to provide meaningful access and opportunity to people means that they should not lose the resources they need right when they're beginning to grow their income. And that we want them to have uninterrupted economic mobility instead. So we will be piloting a new program, Career Mobility Action Plan, or Career MAP, that is going to first start with 300 families who are in our rapid rehousing program and continue essential supports while they build their income. And we will launch this in an interagency effort in partnership with other workforce development agencies, University of the District of Columbia, to make sure that we are supporting people in our district career pathways to have really meaningful access to careers. So we think this is a really important demonstration for the district and really for our nation about removing some of the structural barriers that exist in our programs to growing income. We know that housing is a critical need for lots of people, and we hear from our work partners on the workforce development side that one of the biggest barriers they have when training people in jobs and apprenticeships is that their housing is not stable, or if they accept that promotion or that next increase, they will lose their housing. So this is important from all angles that we figure out how to get this right, and I'm very excited about it. And look forward to sharing more about it as we go. Next slide. So for the remainder of the presentation, I'm really going to focus less on some of the other DHS programs and focus more for this audience is what we're doing on housing and homelessness. So we have a great success to build on from our work on family homelessness. We started there with looking at the entire system of how we make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring through the implementation of our Homeward DC plan, which is the development and implementation of which has been led by the head of our Interagency Council on Homelessness, Christy Greenwald. And with Christy's leadership and a whole lot of effort across agencies, we have been really successful in our homeless prevention efforts on reducing the length of time that families spend in shelter and changing the entire experience of what shelter looks like for families, not only by closing DC General and opening short-term family housing in all wards of our city, but also phasing out the use of overflow motels for shelter for family and continuing to enhance what that experience is in transitions to housing more quickly, and funding housing intervention so that families can exit to housing and have that stability of housing more readily. And by doing that, we've reduced family homelessness dramatically over the last 6 years. We have seen in the last year alone a 50% decrease in our point in time count in family homelessness, and over the last 5 years, an 85% decrease in homelessness among families. We are now fully sort of right-sized that system, and there's a lot we are learning from that of how we need to increase and double down our strategies and efforts for single adults, where we started with really trying to focus on permanent supportive housing so that we could then go back to really work on right-sizing shelter as people who had been stuck within our system were finally exiting to permanent housing. And what we've learned in some of the analysis from the ICH shows is that we underestimate the number of people who self-resolve, and we also underestimated inflow into our system. And so we have a whole set of strategies in Homeward DC where we are really now taking on that systems approach, putting into a much more complex system that does not have a singular front door and has a lot more people in it, the same types of strategies so that we can, at the front door, expand our diversion resources and the supports available so people don't enter shelter and are in the system for a long time before they begin to understand how to access help with something that could have been helped much more readily right at the time that crisis was occurring. We also are redesigning our shelters and investing in a range of alternatives and programs that changes the experience. We know a lot of people we talk to who are unsheltered are out there because they don't feel like shelter is safe. They don't trust the conditions that are there, and they feel more comfortable on the streets. That should not be the case. Shelter needs to be a place that is welcoming, where people are safe, where they understand, where they feel invested in and are supported to exit more quickly. And so their investments in both the building infrastructure as well as the quality of services within our shelters. And then we're taking to a larger scale the growth of our rapid rehousing program for single adults, who these would be people who are, again, not qualifying for permanent supportive housing, but they still need help to exit homelessness with housing supports, as well as we are investing in much more permanent supportive housing throughout our entire system. So a lot of exciting systems level work that we think is going to have tremendous income. And this is coupled with both district resources as well as an infusion of federal resources that are going to help us with this. On the next slide, we break some of that down. So on this slide, you can see that we are really excited that over the next year, we will have about 1,000 households who will be able to exit homelessness with a permanent subsidy. Some of this is in units that are in the pipeline for permanent supportive housing in collaboration with DHCD and the Housing Authority. Some of these are new emergency housing vouchers that have been allocated from the federal government to the district. $11.7 million has been allocated for the emergency housing vouchers for DC, as well as additional scattered site permanent supportive housing through a growth in the PSH program. So that translates to about 758 adults who are unaccompanied by minor children, as well as roughly 347 families. Now, those numbers of how the emergency housing vouchers are allocated are still under some discussion. So we needed to put some rough numbers on that for the budget while there was still a process happening to really look at that allocation. And also a number of those vouchers will go to serve the needs of survivors of domestic violence who need safe housing to exit an abusive situation. And there are also vouchers, some allocated for youth who are being served right now in the youth homeless services system, who are now aging out of that system. We don't want them to have to return to homelessness to meet the criteria for PSH. And so we will be able to support them on a smooth transition for the small number of young people who meet the need for permanent supportive housing from our youth homeless services. So that is a lot of permanent housing that will be available. The $11.7 million is funded with the Housing Authority, of course, from HUD. And then the services are funded in DHS's budget to match with those vouchers. And those will be administered and prioritized based on the HUD guidance through the district's coordinated housing assessment and placement process, or our CAP system. I know that I'm seeing your face, Stephen. I know that there was a certain amount of time you wanted me to talk versus answer questions. I do understand there was a question earlier about the entirety of the Homeward DC funding. And if we skip ahead a couple of slides, I can go over the Homeward DC budget as well, or I can pause here and answer questions. I will leave it to you for what best serves your membership.
So Laura, I think that I want to give you time to cover what you want to cover. And I want to frame it this way, just very quickly, and it might guide. So with everything that we're doing on the housing side, and investments in economic development and new business generation and attracting outside both retailers and investors and so forth, without focusing on the human capital, which is really the district's greatest asset, we will never have a complete strategy or platform. And one of the things I've always said about, Laura, you and your passion for our greatest asset, which is our human capital, is that you constantly focus on thoughtful, connected strategies, not just within your own program system, but with other systems within our government body, if you will. So with that, I give you license to share with us what you want to share with us through that framework, because I know that's how you're constantly thinking about your work and your agency and your programs and your investments. So take us where you want to take us.
Steve, thank you. Thank you both for the invitation and for the compliment, because we do try to think about our work in the broader ecosystem in which we operate. And we certainly know that people who are living in poverty in our community have all of the same talent that people who are born into communities with a lot of means have, yet the way that they're supported to realize that potential is not the same. And, and at the core of our work is how do we change that proposition and really make sure that that we are bridging access and opportunity for our residents, and so that as you said, the human capital, the talent that is inherent in our residents, that they have that opportunity to use that in the ways that they want. And so much of what we do is providing essential supports, but also linkages to opportunities that will actually provide that platform. So I know there was a question about there's $35 million that is sort of under the Homeward DC umbrella that came on before I joined your meeting, and I just we'll break that down for you since I have it here up on the slide, starting with the single adult system. And I talked a little bit about these aspects of the system on the slide where we sort of talked about the single system. So won't spend a lot of time, but I wanted you to see what we're thinking about in terms of that breakdown. Now, when we talk about $35 million towards Homeward DC, what's important to note is these are not the recurring dollars for the things that we have funded in our first 5 years of implementation of that strategic plan. These are the net new resources that are based on the strategies of our interagency council and the community. What we've prioritized is what is needed now. So that is expanded again, the diversion, the quality of shelter, some of what happens in shelter, our outreach teams to, again, make that connection for people who are staying outside, the services and the rents for people in rapid rehousing and in permanent supportive housing. And we will leverage some efficiencies in our permanent supportive housing program in the next fiscal year in collaboration with the Department of Healthcare Finance by through a state plan amendment that allows waiver authority to begin billing Medicaid for some of those services with a 70% match. That will allow us over time to realize some savings on the services side that can be reinvested in our strategies to end homelessness, which is very exciting. So there's a lot of work that's been happening over a number of years to get us to that point, and we're very excited to realize that in the next fiscal year. On the next slide is the remainder of the Homeward DC budget, how that breaks down. So on the next slide, we have for families, the additional, some additional investments in our homelessness prevention program. This has been a really important resource at the front door of Virginia Williams for people who need, but for the ability to access some flexible assistance would end up in the homeless services system, but we're able to help them outside the system, as well as expanding our permanent supportive housing program and the administration that is needed to run all of that expansion, as well as right sizing and continuing to grow our supports for youth who experience homelessness. So with that, I'm gonna leave the rest of the conversation and we can go up to the question and answer slide so it's not distracting, and just I'm here to answer what would be of most interest and value to this audience.
Thank you, Laura, so much. Thank you for, as always, for your energy and your commitment and your enthusiasm about the work that you do. It could be argued that you have among the heaviest of lifts, focusing on that human capital and hope and focusing on our most vulnerable populations. I can't remember the author, but I love the quote. He said, "A society is judged by what it does for the least of its members." And I think that you are in that cross section of interventions and things. So let me go to some questions. There were a few that came up in the chat. If you have questions, put them in there. One of them is for those families in RRH who are not selected for the career mobility plan, how many more months of housing subsidy will be made available, and what other supports will be made available to help them?
That's a really important question. And so we are looking at that right now. We know there are still some unknowns around as we reopen the strength of our economy. And what we know right now is that families are still very much relying on that financial assistance with their rent. What we've also seen, particularly for some families who've been in that program because of their financial need and have been receiving case management supports from the agency for, in some cases, a number of years now, that they may not need the case management in the same way as they need the financial assistance. So we are in the process of looking at both resources available for extension in FRSP. Right now, everyone is extended through the end of July, as what and how we maximize the financial assistance that's needed for rents while reallocating some of the case management to people who are newly exiting shelter and need those services. So decoupling the services when that makes sense from the rent subsidies. So we will be rolling out a strategy. What we can say right now is, as we've said in the past, nobody will be exited with less than 60 days of notice, but we are really looking at how we let families know at least 6 months that that they have at least 6 months left in the program, and what that number is, we are still determining. And also, we will make sure that families have case management for at least 30 days before their case management supports go to help ensure that they're connected, depending on whether they want to make sure they're connected with job search or job training through the TANF program, where they can access a rich array of services and supports to help them with how they use the fact that they may have rent paid for a period of time to not have to worry about that and really focus on other things. So that is the broad brush, and we have over 3,000 households in the program right now. Some will transition who need permanent supportive housing onto vouchers with the vouchers that are available, and some will go into career map. And then there's going to be a number of families where we're extending some financial support and working to make sure they're connected with what they need to be able to work through that next period, that next transition, and the stability they have in housing in the meantime.
Great, thank you, Laura. I have another question. This question was actually posed to Polly and the deputy mayor as well, regarding returning citizens, asking, is there really a strategy to focus? Actually, CNHED has been a part of a budding conversation about the need to really create almost like an interagency council on returning citizens, similar to the one that exists on homelessness because of some cross-agency issues. But let me pose the question to you to see if there's conversation or strategy that you can point to for barriers faced by returning citizens.
So there's the Reentry Council, and we've asked, certainly engaged with the Reentry Council, and I know that the ICH director is also engaged in that collaboration with Reentry Council around how to make sure those strategies intersect. The Department of Human Services participates in the Ready Center. We have staff who are there to help connect people to income supports and other benefits. And we certainly see people within the continuum of our programs who are returning to our community. And but we don't offer a specific targeted set of resources that are only for reentry. Rather, we see the importance, as you pointed out, to work in the interagency space to make sure that as people are coming home, they have access to the supports that they need in order to make that transition, and within the programs that are available at the Department of Human Services. So we're really happy to continue to lean in and engage in that conversation with partners if there's some ways that we can make sure that we are doing that more effectively.
Got you. Got another one. What is being done to address those who enter DC's coordinated entry system, whether through shelters, pathways to housing, et cetera, and never hear back as far as what housing provider can help them? So
there's a court through the system that the community set up. There's a meeting with a number of providers, so outreach providers, shelter providers, homeless services providers, the Department of Human Services, the Community Partnership, who's our continuum of care agency who manages the data in our homeless management information system. That group comes together and meets around making referrals based on the number of available housing slots we have at a given time. And it is, and people are prioritized based on a published set of criteria for permanent supportive housing through that system or other housing placements. So the best place that somebody can check is with their case manager who would have done their housing assessment. They can do that with outreach providers. They can do that with their shelter provider. They can do that if they go to eat meals at Miriam's Kitchen or other, or to understand what can be shared about that. We don't operate it as a wait list. It's not a first come, first serve kind of thing. So it's hard to know, but we, it's probably an area where we can look at some more efficient ways that people can understand where they are in the process or what to expect. Because we do also, as we refer people, I know our providers spend a lot of time trying to locate people and make sure that they can find them and then begin to work with them through that housing process.
Okay. And someone just put in, how do CBOs get invited to those meetings to represent clientele?
Great question. So that is, so there's, I can follow up with the, I think it looks like, with you, Stephen, you can share the information with how that works, and how to get connected to those meetings, to the CAP meetings.
Okay. And Sophia, who put that question in, can you make sure that we have your contact information so we can connect you with DHS and get that information? And then I have one more question, and then I'll be just about at time. Director Zeilinger, what is DHS's assessment of how families in the short-term emergency shelters are doing?
We have seen fantastic success and outcomes from our short-term family housing program overall. I mean, I think it's really one of the very important things we've done to see the success that we have on family homelessness, that we're able to welcome people into really beautiful settings with the right array of services and support them to make a transition in an average of 90 days into permanent housing in the community. And we, in all of our programs, I think the question might have been specifically about Ward 3, are doing fantastically well at that. And they're also have established some really strong partnerships in their neighborhoods and with other groups in the community. So we're really proud of that. In most cases, the neighbors have been welcoming. They've had block parties when in the my partner refers to as the before times when that was a thing. And we look forward to having more things like that in the after times. But we think that program is going really well. We've had, in fact, we're looking at, there has been kind of low participation in some of the advisory teams lately because there really aren't issues that are coming up, that I think there was a lot of fear of what would be, but as we've opened and we haven't seen very many things. It's been like, how frequently can we get the trash picked up a little more frequently types of issues. So, which is wonderful. So we're really proud of that reform and the program. And if folks are interested in seeing what they look like on the inside, there are Friendship Place, I know on their website, has a tour of the Brooks where you can take a virtual tour. And we also on the mayor's website, on her social media, there is a tour of our most recent Ward 1 short-term family housing, the Terrell.
So it is time, Director, I just want to thank you for all of your efforts during the last year and a half to protect our most vulnerable populations, for standing up State DC, for trying to meet providers where they were. It was a scary time. It was a vulnerable time. It was an uncertain time. And the district, and I've shared this with you personally, I sit on about 4 national boards, and during the pandemic, I got a view into other cities and how they were responding. And I know that much of what we did here in the district, both at the community level, as well as at the governmental level, was actually examined by other cities and in some cases adopted. And I think that everybody was reeling, but you were in a unique position because you had to stand up for our most vulnerable populations. And I know it's been, it's been a roller coaster ride of about now a year and a half. And just thank you for all of your efforts to help not only us as providers, but the people that we represent and try to serve as well. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for saying that. And I will pass that along to the tremendous staff at DHS who has been really on the ground, working their regular jobs, working our operations during the pandemic that are over and above and have really flexed to just work tirelessly to meet the ever-changing needs of our residents. And I could not be more proud to be both among, working for a mayor and among other leadership of the district that's been that committed, but also to represent the tremendous public servants who go oftentimes not seen unless someone is complaining about something that didn't go well, who are doing just absolutely phenomenal work and are so passionate about what they do. So thank you for that. I'm going to take that, I'm going to share it with the broader group of folks who have been hard at work. So thank you so much for having me again. And if other questions do come up, we're happy to follow up and provide you with answers for your membership.
Our staffs are connected. I'm sure we're going to get some follow-up questions. We'll make sure that you get them. And just as we said with the previous government witnesses, we will definitely be robustly supporting the mayor's budget for your agency and your programs.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Thanks. Okay, last but not certainly least, we have our Public Housing Authority Director, Tyrone Garrett. Tyrone, I don't know if you bought art. Hallie, does he have a presentation to put up, or Director Garrett? Are you just gonna freelance?
Yeah, I'm gonna freelance. Actually, I'm gonna basically refer back.
Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So Steve, I truly appreciate the opportunity. This will be my last one of these for a while, but I just wanted to say thank you for all the support that your organization has given to the Housing Authority over the last few years, and my administration definitely. What you saw from the presentation by by DHCD and also by DHS was, something in lines of dealing with the local rental supplement program, right? And there's been a change under the mayor's budget so that it allows for a lot more transparency for the program itself, based on how the mayor has played out her budget and how she's demonstrated she wants to move forward. So, currently the way it works is that DCHA receives a budget allocation for the local rent supplement vouchers, but then we assign those, based on recommendations from both, Director Zeilinger's department and also from DHCD, from Polly Donaldson, Director Donaldson's department, based on project-based and also the tenant-based components, respectively. What's going to change now is that the amendment being proposed through the BSA language will allow for those two departments to actually directly manage the funds for both project-based and tenant-based vouchers, respectively. And that, still allows DCHA itself to participate administratively, but it gives a little more autonomy to those two departments to be able to administer the program and manage the allocation of funds directly, which is important because we want to figure out ways to make a seamless program. This is something that's very unique to the district, having the local program itself. It can't be compared to anything else across the country. And I know when it first started out, there was a lot of attempt to model it after how the federal program works. But because we have so many local nuances, I think it's moving in the direction where it's going to really be policies are going to start to be based on what we need within the community itself and how to apply the local program without having a lot of the extra nuances and red tape that the federal program guidelines might provide. So I think it's important to note that we're moving in that direction. We're working with both departments, DHS and also DHCD, to figure out ways that we can be really more efficient with administering the program. So one thing that we did actually was create a department now dedicated solely to DHS. That's a unit within a unit. And then with the emergency vouchers that we're receiving from HUD, that we're creating a new unit just for that too. So basically, I don't like to silo, but in this particular case, I think we need to have a direct partnership from our agency with DHS on this environment, on the emergency vouchers, definitely, so that we can get those out the door quickly. Because the faster we actually, I don't know if any people know, although we're receiving $11.7 million, the faster we get that vouchers out the door and into the hands of the vulnerable population that needs them, there's an opportunity for more funding. That means more vouchers on the street. And so it's important for us to make sure this program runs efficiently and works for everyone, the DCHA and DHS included. So because the benefit is going to be to the people that we serve. Overall, I have to say that our budget really goes unchanged for the most part. Everything stays pretty constant in terms of public safety at $4.2 million. Our local funding is still going to be at $7.14 million, which is pretty much the same as what we've already received in the past years. Shallow subsidy is still going to maintain at the same level at 1.4 million. And we're going to actually have some increases to the local program by about $2.8 million. But really, I believe the bulk of the increases on the DHS side within their budget that will help, serve the homeless population. And then, that's really going to be it for us on the operating side of the budget. For the capital side of the budget, we're going to receive about $22 million, or it's proposed that we receive $22 million in this particular fiscal year for fiscal year 22. Which is, we've initially received 24.9 in fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, we received 50 million. And then this year we're going to receive it's proposed that we receive 22 million. But overall, what was pointed out by the mayor and also by Mayor Bowser and also by Deputy Mayor Falcicchio was that, over a 6-year period, what the hope is that between fiscal years 21 and fiscal years 26, we'll be able to have, in upwards of $107 million in total as a capital budget allocation to the Housing Authority, which is important to us because it really goes to the point of our transformation plan that we created. If you remember, when I first started talking about the transformation plan about 2 years ago, we had no funding. There was nothing attached to it. The only thing that we could rely upon were possible HUD programs that we could apply for in terms of demolition and disposition applications to provide opportunities for relocation of residents. But since that point in time, we've been able to receive, at least to date, about $90 million for the program itself. And I think it's important for us to realize that without the transformation plan, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation about a capital budget for the Housing Authority. And I think it's important to recognize that our endeavors with my staff, who are so much smarter than I am, able to come up with a plan and then modify a plan in such a way that we believe we can start moving through the portfolio as a whole over the next 7 to 10 years.
That's great. I really appreciate that. I particularly appreciate your early comments around the transparency with LRSP. As you well know, this has been an evolving challenge of just trying to get it right. And everybody has been at the table trying to get something that frankly all sides could agree on. And I think that the proposal that the mayor came up with this year actually came up with in previous years. Last year, I think, was the first year the right sizing, if you will, was actually a formal proposal. I think that there were some early uncertainties and considerations about that. And it feels like those kinks have been worked out. We've been talking with the mayor and the council and others, and I think we're headed toward a place where the mayor's intention of getting it right, getting the money in the budget in the year that it's needed, versus some of the other approaches that have been used, that we actually may be heading toward that. Let me see if there were questions.
Hey, Steve, before I take that question, if there are, I just wanted to also, you mentioned human capital when talking to Director Zeilinger, and I just wanted to say our transformation plan also includes that. About less than a month ago, we allocated $250,000 to work with Urban Institute on our needs assessment for properties that we were going to be engaging through the transformation plan. And we started out with those first 14, but then moved through the whole entire portfolio. So, it gave us an opportunity to definitely create a partnership with Urban, and then going forward, the idea is to build on human capital, because we can do the bricks and mortar all day long, right? If we get allocations, but building the people, the residents, their families, and allowing for a form of self-sufficiency to whatever degree that may be, is just as important as anything else. And so in our transformation plan, there is a component built in for human capital, and we've begun that march this year.
That's great to hear. And I'll take my CNHED hat off just a little and revert back to a lot of my former bodies of work and just say, I personally believe, and CNHED believes as well, that if we don't develop that human capital, we are failing, and we are creating we're creating a broader dependence on systems than we have to. And I'm not saying that there will always be people that we have to help. And there are always protected classes of people in the work that we do. But there is a whole nother existence of folks that are capable of evolving and developing and moving upward. And it shouldn't be because of a lack of political will, policies that aren't fair, or programs that don't work, that they not succeed. So seeing those investments show up in different places, I just think is really critical. I'm glad to hear that it's showing up in your space as well.
Yes, definitely.
Let's see. Alfonso Padron has put in a few things about wanting to connect. I'll make sure that we get him and you connected. I'm going to ask the audience if there are questions for Director Garrett. Please put them in the chat. And this was a question about DBH and its core service agencies and why are they not included. And I'll just say this to Alfonso, it's just a function of time in this one. If you notice, we don't have economic development included in this hearing as well. Our remote existence experience has taught us that about 2 hours is as much as we can do. So next week we will have a economic development briefing, and we'll hear from some other agencies not represented here today that represent the economic development clusters. We are tracking the DBH budget in the work that we do. So if you want to circle back with us, the reason they're not here today is just simply an issue of time. We can't drag this out any more than we can, just in terms of just people's ability to, kind of stay in a remote space. So if you have issues or concerns around DBH, its core agencies and/or its budget, circle back with us and we're happy to do that. Director Garrett, I don't have any more questions for you. If you have any kind of final statement that you'd like to make, we certainly want to give you that opportunity.
No, I just want to say again, thank you for the opportunity to work with everyone. Thank you for supporting my administration while I was here. And I believe that DCHA is well on its way to, turning that corner and showing everyone exactly what our capacity is. I think the key to being able to do that was knowing exactly what needed to be improved. You have to know what's broken in order to fix it. And I think I was able to, along with a strong group of individuals and professionals at the organization, able to identify what we needed to fix, how we needed to fix it. And then now it's time for somebody to actually implement it. And I think whoever succeeds is going to have a great opportunity with a great group of people to get that done. Laura talked about public servants, and at DCHA, that's exactly what we have, dedicated individuals who believe in the mission of, helping and serving our community to the fullest capacity. So
that's great. I do have one question. Given the proposed changes in how LRSP is managed between DHCD and DCHA, will the inspection process shift? I don't know if it's too early to know that, but
a little early to know that, but I know we'll refine it as best as we possibly can. I know that we created an opportunity for our inspectors to really be dedicated to DHS since COVID hit, and that was really important. And we dove into that pretty deeply, trying to get units inspected and prepared and ready for residents from the community. So that's one thing that Laura talked about with COVID hitting, and you mentioned it. We didn't stop working. We couldn't stop working. And so, we had to come up with ideas to make this thing happen, even in the midst of COVID and the pandemic itself. And we were able to do that. So maybe some of the things that were identified, I have to say, as a best practice for us will carry over into future interactions with DHS on inspections, possibly.
Right.
And if not, they'll be refined in another way.
Director Garrett, thank you for your service over the last few years and for your relationship with CNHED and our members and the hard work that you did on behalf of residents in the District of Columbia.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank everyone. Hope to see everyone soon. Take care.
Yes. So we're done. Hallie, do you have any parting thoughts for us? We're going to get presentations out to the attendees. Several of you all have asked for that. I do want to highlight, as it was said by a number of the administration representatives, that, this is part one of a part two process, which is that, we're now turning to advocacy with the council. There are a lot of things that we have been asking, frankly, fighting for years that are now showing up in the mayor's proposals. We need to be able to let our voices be heard with council members. Hallie has already given you information on Advocacy Day. You all are also connected to other networks that may connect you to council members. So please let our voices be heard. We have a lot of progress represented in the mayor's budget proposals. We're having early conversations with council members who are expressing the fact that it is an ambitious a budget, but it's also one that they seem to support. So we just need to let them know where we are. Hallie has put our upcoming advocacy events in the chat, but as you well know, we will be hitting your emails up. We will be posting on the website. We particularly need a good turnout for Advocacy Day. CNHED will begin its individual meetings with council members. Well, we've actually already started, but we will continue until we've met with them all. Thank you so very much for coming out today. Thanks, Hallie and the team, for putting this together. Thanks to members of the administration for coming and speaking with us today.
Everybody.
All right, that's a wrap.